Good morning, and welcome to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you to Talk of the Town for this Thursday, July 23rd. I'm Gary Stevens. Sliver of open line time following the 10 o'clock news. Patty Vandenberg in about an hour with what's new around Holland. We'll be chatting with Steve Redmond of the Ottawa County Patriots in the 10:30 segment. And then at 11:10 with Wellspring from Spectrum Health Zeeland Community Hospital, Sarah Dockersloot will be chatting with the president of Spectrum Health ZCH, Ron Lewis. But every month, normally on the third Tuesday of the month, but today it's on a Thursday, we get an update on what's going on in Holland Public Schools with the superintendent, Dr. Brian Davis. He joins us from his office. Good morning, Dr. Davis. Hope all is well with you and the family and with the Dutch.
Everything is well. We are doing everything we can to ensure our part, to make sure that we're not only protecting ourselves, but protecting others. Whether we are working inside of our offices here at school, prepping for the school year, or out in the community. And appreciate all the masks that I am seeing worn out when I am out and about, and everyone doing their part.
With those, by the way, we are in a Zoom connection with Dr. Davis, and we will have not only the audio, but also a link to the video when we put it up on our website at WHTC.com a little later. He adorned one of the red H masks that was popular back on the 1st of June when Holland High had its graduation ceremony. But the one thing about those H masks, Brian, you can flip them up either way. Because yes, the letter H goes either way.
Well, it's really meant to go this way. If you put it on the opposite side, it does look a little, it's still an H, but yeah, the proper way to wear it is like that. And this is one of the basic elements of our return to learn school plan. Right now, Michigan, obviously, we see cases in different areas of our state on the increase. And watching the news today, 31 states have now issued and mandated the wearing of masks. And we know that it is one of the effective ways to try to reduce, at least, and bend the curve and minimize the impact. And the mask or face covering of that nature are going to be an essential back-to-school component in Holland Public Schools, schools across the Holland-Zeeland area, and schools across our state. So we're trying to do our part to make sure that we're modeling that as the employees. We are in mass production of the mask that I just wore, and we have had a number of community members when I first tweeted out saying I'd like to have one of those to be able to wear, so we're going to try to make those available as well. But it's a new era we find ourselves. It's a new way of interaction. It's a new way of keeping each other safe, and it's the one small thing that we can all do to help in that process. But it's going to become a mandatory requirement in our schools as we get set to launch about a month from now.
We're chatting with Dr. Brian Davis in a Zoom conversation. You can call us at 395-1450, 395-1450 if you have a question for Dr. Davis. I will refer our listeners to the weekly Holland Public Schools update on WHTC Morning News. Jason Craner chatted with you yesterday, Dr. Davis, about the Return to Learn plan, and I will have our listeners be referred to that particular podcast to get more of the entire nuts and bolts details of the Return to Learn plan. But you mentioned masks as one of them. Probably red for the most part, although white with red might not be a bad idea either.
We talked about the white, excuse me.
The red.
The red, yes, exactly. It's still kind of early. We've had a lot of meetings already this morning. Yes, so we're going to be providing masks to students to be able to wear and to our staff, but certainly students are going to be able to bring their own from home to wear and do if they would like that, certainly following our appropriate dress codes. We've had some slight changes in what our requirements are going to be in Holland Public since our broadcast yesterday. That's largely driven by the science. In our plan that we are going to be rolling out in pieces and parts, and then the full final plan on August 10, we've had a lot of engagement and a lot of involvement. We've had over 100 individuals working since last April on this work. And we know that regardless of what we do, everyone's going to have an opinion on this. You only need to turn on the radio or turn on the television or walk across your street. Everyone has an opinion on COVID-19 and what should be happening or not happening. As a school system, we are the experts in education, academics, instructional practice, supporting staff and development, helping struggling readers become readers. That's the work that we do. I am so appreciative of the work of Holland Hospital and the nurses that we have on staff, and Dr. Paul Heidel from the Ottawa County Department of Public Health and his team. We're leaving the science and the medical pieces to them, and we will follow all of their advice because they know that work. They're following the studies across the country. They're following the epidemiologists here in our state of Michigan at our major universities, and that's how those decisions will become informed. So we can all have an opinion on the medical science or not, but as Holland Public Schools, we're following the medical opinion that's provided to us. We can all have an opinion on the best educational opportunities, and I appreciate that. We've had a team of individuals engage in that process. But I want to share with our listeners today that a small change from yesterday is we're going to be asking elementary students to also wear masks as part of their learning day too. It's only required 6 through 12 under the current governor's return to learn roadmap. You have the option of doing it at the elementary level. Given now the impact in cases, it's possible that the governor could say elementary students have to also, but we're going to have that happen in our classrooms as an extra safety precaution and measure. And I'm happy to see many summer school programs, including what they've been doing now at the Outdoor Discovery Center. Our younger kids have had no issues with wearing masks as part of their summer school programs. I think as how we respond to the wearing of a mask as an adult, how we model that, how we take the collective responsibility for the safety of everyone, our attitude towards that will transcend to the students. Obviously, it's difficult to wear a mask all day. I've been trying to do that. We wear them here unless I'm in my office with the door closed. But sensory breaks are going to be important to be able to have time where you don't have to wear your mask. So that's going to be intentionally built in across the school day, across the levels. So I do want to share, Gary, that for our parents, they are going to continue to receive updates. They're going to get another update from me today, and that will be inviting them to a series of Zoom meetings on Monday next week. These Zoom meetings will be recorded for parents that are unable to attend. We'll be doing Zoom meetings also in Spanish. And this is going to really lay out now more of the specific details of our Return to Learn plan for Holland Public Schools. And parents are going to be asked to make a choice next week about what they want to do for their child. There is going to be the opportunity for face-to-face, in-person instruction that's going to have a number of safety precautions and procedures in place that everyone who attends face-to-face will agree to do. That's to ensure the safety and well-being of our staff and of our students. Great care has been put into working on what those plans look like. We want parents to understand what that looks like. If a parent decides that they, for whatever reason, do not want to participate in a face-to-face instructional format, they will have the opportunity for an online option. And we're going to be asking parents next week to make that decision on an individual basis for each child. That way, during the week of August 3rd, we can begin finalizing scheduling, classroom assignments, and placements. Different things are happening across the community, across our state, across our country when it comes to school. And I think sometimes we live inside our own little world and we think, oh, this is just happening in Holland Public Schools. And why does this have to happen for me and my child? And this is happening across the region and across the country. And I really appreciate the opportunity to work with my colleagues, my superintendents here in Ottawa County. We're all doing very similar and same things, and we're all doing somewhat slightly different things based upon our parent surveys and the needs of our community. But our goal, my goal, is to get kids back to school as soon as we can. I know that nothing replaces that face-to-face time with a classroom teacher, that relationship that's developed to be able to truly help a child to read and then help a child to grow from there. And my number one biggest concern right now, next to safety, obviously, is literacy. Making sure that our youngest kids have that platform to be able to read and do that. And our kids missed so much school last year. We're going to have some schedule changes next year at our 6th through 12th grade. The school start and end times have been posted for our schools, and it's going to be important that parents understand and take a look at those. We've done a lot of things to reduce the amount of time that students will be transitioning within the school day. So we're moving to block schedules. So on Mondays and Tuesdays, students will have half of their classes, and on Thursday and Friday, they will have the other half of their classes, with a Wednesday alternating. That will allow us to cohort students at the middle school and the high school level. So if something were to happen on a Monday and that we need to content trace back to a potential infection or contamination, we only have half of the students that were in that rotation that we're having to be concerned about. So that will be a similar piece at the elementary, in that we'll be creating cohorts there. It will be a classroom cohort. That cohort will be your classroom, probably 20 to 25 kids. And you will do everything together as a cohort. So if there is a potential contamination or concern, we know where that is and how we can contain that and hopefully continue to operate schools. There's a lot of pieces related to the medical piece of that we'll be sharing in our plan, but also with parents next week. So there are 3 Zoom meetings coming up on Monday. And again, I said they'll be recorded, but elementary is from 3 to 4:30. Watch for that Zoom link to come out for parents to be engaged in that. Middle school is from 5 to 6:30, and high school is from 7 to 8:30. And these are questions and opportunities for our parents who have kids in the system. We're getting a lot of calls from community members who have a lot of opinions about whether or not schools should open. I appreciate that. We will take your name and number down and we'll have someone get back to you. But right now our focus is really about having those questions and conversations and communications with our parents, because that's our primary focus. But we know everyone needs to have that information and how to best support. So our goal is to get kids back to school in a safe way, to do what's practical and feasible under the roadmap that's been outlined for us. And we're anxious for that to occur. Our teachers are really anxious to get back to school. And I just want to do a big shout out to a couple of groups before I forget to do. One, the leadership of our teachers who represent them in a collective bargaining process have been absolutely phenomenal. They've been walking alongside us this whole way, creatively problem solving, really looking at multiple options. How can we best utilize and do this? Everything from what does washing of masks look like, to lining up outside, to be able to be creative about recess time, all those kinds of things. So a huge shout out to those individuals who have been surveying their members and talking with their members all along. A huge, huge shout out to my administrative team who have been championing this work, who are building the schedules to make this work. Just a great shout out to them. To the over 100 community members and volunteers who have been part of our return to school plan, working on that since April. Have we crossed every T and dotted every I? Maybe today, but we know this is an ever evolving and changing piece. To return under phase 4, which we can return to in face-to-face, there are 274 elements that you have to consider. And each one of those elements engages a conversation that has 5 or 10 decision-making trees perhaps underneath that. And that's why it's been taking so long for us to come up with this plan. We want to be very intentional about it. We also know, Gary, that we're not going to be able to prevent COVID from entering into our school system. We practice safety procedures and routines. We practice a number of drills. We can't prevent a severe storm or tornado from coming through Holland. We work to prevent any issue of a fire. We do safety drills in the event that we would have any intruder in our building that would make things unsafe. We can't necessarily prevent those. What we work to do is, if it happens, how do you minimize the impact as much as possible? And that's why we're trying to handle the COVID piece. We know it's prevalent, over 4 million cases in our country. That's a certain percentage of our population. I get that. Fortunately, here in Ottawa County, the number of cases continues to be at a label or a level that hasn't put us into some of the other area zones that are occurring across our state. We will continue to monitor that, and we will be ready to pivot and shift as needed based upon what that looks like in Ottawa County. We heard from our parents loud and clear, needing to have a common learning management system so that if we're in school or my kids are at home, how can I get consistent feedback that looks the same if I have kids across multiple grades? It's simple and easy to understand. What does that look like? So that parent involvement and engagement has really been important. So thank you to all the individuals that have been engaged in that work. You and I both know we can't make every point that was brought to us a reality, but we're trying to look at all those pieces and parts that make sense to do that. And the crazy piece about this, Gary, is we're trying to do all this on July 27 or whatever today's date is.
23rd.
23rd. See, I gained a week already, 4 days. I don't have a budget for next year. I have no idea at this point in time what funding is going to come from the state, what funding, hopefully, or additional funding will come from the federal government to be able to enact and do this. We have some basic understandings, but a lot of that can shift and change. And we all know that the economics of our state and the economics of people returning to work is directly related to our schools being in operation as well. And so how do we work together in that way to do that as best as possible? We're going to be creating some hotlines for parents to be able to call as well to get medical advice about what to do, to get information if we're in remote time about the learning management system that way, and just in general of our school operations. It's going to look different, it's going to feel different, it's going to be different as it's going to be across our community. August 20th is another key date for individuals that have kids in Holland Public Schools. We're going to create some opportunities to come in and walk schedules and be there. And then we have some open house information that'll be shared in the future too. HollandPublicSchools.org, there's a Return to Learn section dedicated to this information, and it will continue to be populated as we get closer to school, and so that everyone can be informed who has a child in our school district about ways in which to support that and be part of our learning this coming school year. Thanks for all of that. I tried to capture as much as we can. As you can see, there's a lot of details, and we'll be rolling those out in different pieces over time.
I want to ask you one more question before we get to our break. And of course, we also want to talk about the August 4th primary election, Brian, as well. But I do want to ask you a question I posed to your colleague in Zeeland, Cal de Kuiper. And this was stemming back from this past spring when it was virtual learning. Based on what you, and I say you, Holland Public Schools, experienced, how did that virtual learning work out? Was it okay? Was it not okay? If we have to go back and turn up the dial once again and be back to all virtual, how concerned are you that that might have to be the case when maybe, and I'm going to quote Cal or paraphrase Cal de Kuiper's statement, it was good at the beginning, but it fizzled out by the end of the academic year this past spring?
Yeah, I would say a couple of different things. One, under the remote learning plan in the spring, we could not necessarily grade individuals, or there was no accountability to complete work or grade level progression. That was the directive given to us. That certainly impacted one's motivation to complete work at the different levels. We started out very strong with high levels of participation, and as the weather got nicer and as the opportunities to go outside, we did experience a similar decline in participation. When the learning counts this fall, if we go into remote learning plan, it's going to count. It's going to, I think, impact some things a little bit differently there. We had about 75% of the parents who responded to our survey, which was a really good representation across our district, both economically and also ethnically, that about 70% said the learning for them provided was just about right. It's kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? It's too hot, too cold, just about right. And about 70% said just about right. And of course, then you had the other two pieces where it wasn't enough for our family or it was too much. And so we know that that environment is really difficult to differentiate in and provide that. So our teams have been reviewing that information, and certainly if we have to pivot to remote learning during this school year, it will be more academically challenging. It will be more rigorous in terms of what students will need to do. It will count. And they will be receiving specific feedback and grades for that will be counted as part of their grade level progression. And having a common single learning platform for parents to be able to interact with will assist them in being able to provide those supports at home or whomever that caregiver might be. So I'm going to be positive and assume positive intent here that shall we have to shift there, which I don't think it's, are we going to? It's going to be when we have to. Pivot in that domain, and we might have to pivot a couple times throughout the year. I'm hoping we can start the school year. We might have to pivot, into the fall at some point. We come back face to face. We might have to pivot next spring when this resurfaces again. In terms of cycles, we're better prepared. Last time we had to turn things in the organization on a dime, and that was really difficult to do. But yeah, I think kids are ready to get back to school. They want to see their peers. They want to see their teachers. I was out with Miranda yesterday, surprising staff and families at one of our Meet Up and Eat Up food sites and talking with the kids. And they want to get back to school. They want to see their friends. It's been a long time. March 13 was a long time ago.
Indeed, it has been. Brian, it is going to be a primary election day on August the 4th, and Holland Public Schools has a ballot issue that voters in the geographical area of Holland Public School District will need to have a decision on.
Correct. This is our operational millage that typically would have been held in May, but we decided to delay it due to COVID, and here we are again, still experiencing COVID. But this applies to our non-homestead operational millage that generates revenue that is then collected and distributed to the state and returned back to us in terms of school funding. As voters have applied for their ballots, hopefully, and received those, as you consider that, this only applies to a individual's second residence should they have one. This does not apply to your first or primary home. This only is impacting the second homes and or businesses. And this is a 3-year request. And due to Headley and the rise of property values and rate of inflation that's been put in place back in the 1970s to protect the homeowner, we've had a Headley rollback the last year, and we're asking the voters to restore that back up to the 18 mils. That's why they'll see the word increase as a 0.77 for this year. It's restoring back to that 18 that the voters already did before. And then we're asking for that 18 mils in 2021 and 2022 with additional caveat language that if the Headley should impact again, that the voters automatically give us that authority to raise that back up to 18 mils without having to come to the voters again. So it provides a little bit of an insurance protection in there. Again, this only applies to non-principal residents. So take a look at that. There's information on our website at hollandpublicschools.org, and we appreciate individuals considering this. It represents about 30% of our funding for the year, and in the past, our voters have overwhelmingly supported at about an 87% margin. So thank you for that. It's something that we have to do, and if anyone has any questions, again, our website, or they can call my office at 494-2000.
One final thing, and we only have about a minute to discuss it, but I'm going to ask you a question. In Zealand, they approved some ways to refinance their bonds to be able to save a little bit of money. Holland in that situation, or not really?
We have looked at that in the past. It wasn't applicable then, but we are exploring what things might look like in the coming months. Absolutely.
Okay, I just was kind of wondering because obviously that the bond issue that helped big time earlier this past decade you still have to pay off on those bonds.
We do, and we always want to take opportunities to save our taxpayers dollars. And if you look at your summer tax bill when it comes, if you haven't already looked at it, you'll see your school debt millage going down like this if you were to compare it to prior years. So we're on target and plan with that, but we always want to look at ways in which we can save our taxpayers money.
Unfortunately, we won't have any time to take any calls for Dr. Brian Davis. We will put a link to hollandpublicschools.org when we put the podcast of our conversation with Dr. Davis on our website at WHTC.com in a few moments. And then we'll also put a link to our Zoom conversation with Dr. Davis a little bit later on as well, as he adorns his red and with the white H mask. I still say maybe the white with red H could work as well. Sort of give students a choice if they have to wear masks, hopefully when they go back to in-person classes next month. Brian, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day, and do your part. Wear your mask.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brian Davis of Holland Public Schools on WHTC's Talk of the Town. Coming up, it is CBS News with Deborah Rodriguez, followed by WHTC News with Peg McNichol. A little bit of open line time for you, and then we'll get to Patty Vandenberg, what's new around Holland, and then Steve Redmond from the Ottawa County Patriots will be joining us on WHTC's Talk of the Town.